Great.
So, okay, we are live. Um, there you are. Thank you very much, Chris, for doing this with me. I was surprised when I sent you that. So Chris is from Nerd Poker Podcast with Brian Posen and Blaine Capatch and Sarah Gazzardo, and that's one of my favorite podcasts. I'm not a big D&D podcast guy, but I really got into it. And
how did you find? Is it because of D&D? Like, what is it that brought you to it?
I'm a metal dude, and when I found out Brian Poston had a D&D podcast, I was like, well, chances are I like something about this. So, and I was in the car all day doing my courier route, so I checked it out, and I dug it, and I have to tell you, not to kiss your butt, but when you first showed up as Typha, as an NPC, it was, and I think most people agree, immediately it was like you were just in. And I'm like, they gotta keep this guy. Like, he's, because I knew, and it was so funny because before I did this, I was looking at IMDb and stuff, and I was like, Rescue Dawn. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, like I remember you from that. Because like,
oh my god, that was crazy.
Yeah, I was like, I remember you from that. And in Community go, I remember you from that. And I was like, it's Gary the Klansman, of course. I was like,
oh my god.
Because I knew the Thundermans, because vaguely I was like, oh yeah, okay. And then I was just like, yeah, that's him. So it was, it was, and and when they, spoiler alert, when they melted Typha, I was very upset. Because I needed more Battle Chef. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. If you're not super into D&D, unfortunately, one of the main things of D&D is that more often than not, the dice do not go your way.
No.
And you can have like the big fight where it's like, here we go, we all have our magic items and we're all powerful enough to fight the bad guy. And then you roll that 2 or that 1, and you're just like, oh.
Yeah. The what is it? The best laid plans of mice and men. And you get, I have this great thing I'm going to not do. I just blew it, and it's over for me.
Yep. According to that 20-sided die, I explode.
It would seem I slipped onto my own sword. Terrific.
I mean, yeah, that fight in particular, that was a rough one, because that really was sort of like the end of, I don't know how long that campaign was, but a while. It was like, we're going to absorb the god and we're going to fight. Nope.
Yeah. It was, listen, I was into it. I was checking it out. I'm like, oh, this is so great. And when the new season started and like, Chris is staying and he's a Warforged. And I was like, oh, good. And then they explained the character and I'm like, yes, very, very, I like this. And then,
Thanks.
It's
fun. Dan has come up with both that second season campaign with Typha and those guys, and like the Moon Prison, like every time.
Crazy.
On the Patreon, every once in a while we'll do a Q&A where people can ask questions about what his plans were. I always wanted to say, Dan, just talk to me about 20 minutes about the crazy prison on the moon filled with monsters.
It's perfect.
He said in the last Q&A he didn't even know if we would ever make it to the moon. I was like, that's the whole thing.
You weren't going to make it to the moon prison full of evil gods? Like, in a frozen army? Like, what? That was...
oh my gosh, as soon as he said it, I was like, we're all going to die. We're not even going to get to the end of the game. We're just in monster prison.
Exactly. And the thing was, like, before that, it was like, if you look at it on paper, it's like, well, they go up a vine to the moon, and and they're like, what? They go up a vine, but the whole time I'm like, oh, this vine is going to be a real problem. All the dragons coming up the vine. Oh, what are they going to do? And then I was like really stressed out.
oh, that whole time, because it's like, because you're a character in the middle of a fight. You're like, okay, this alligator's 200 feet tall. We got to kill him. Meanwhile, somewhere in the back of your head, also remember, giant black death dragon lining up an umbilical to the moon. Like the whole time you're just like, this fight doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna get killed.
And then
so fun.
And that was with the little angry goth drow teenager, right? Who was And I was like, and the whole time I'm waiting, I'm like, she's gonna turn it around. She's gonna come, and she just did not. She remained a jerk to the very end.
I know, and I don't know if you're caught up on the current campaign, but it sounds as though Dessa, I think is her name.
Right.
I think it sounds as though she may or may not be or have some connection to the Crimson, not Crimson. I always call her Crimson Fang, the Violet Fang. It
Oh
sounds
yeah.
as though it might be her, or maybe some connection to her, and that's like, if we're in the same world as Moon Prison, we're in big trouble, man.
Dan is a crazy genius, and he invented that character. It was like a spider person, and it was in two episodes, or maybe, and then everything else that people are like, oh, we're aware of the spider people, and I'm like, that's it. You're giving me a blink of the spider. I need more of the spider people. I want to know about the spider people. And it was just like, and that was just like, man, do it in there.
Yeah, well, these dum-dums wanted to go rob a bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, I think, also for like narrative stuff. I think sometimes that's the hardest part with D&D is that, you've got however many players, that many different egos and ideas. Not ego in the sense of goons, but in the sense of this person has a good idea, this person has a good idea, and like any group of humans, we have to find some weird compromise. And a lot of times what happens is that thing you say to yourself, wait, the spider people. Oh no.
Yeah.
They're just gonna walk away.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find someone else because he does. I think there's a certain age group of D&D players that have played for a certain amount of time when you understand that you're gonna enjoy it more if you commit mentally to making it work. Do you know what I mean? You gotta have some faith in your DM. You gotta have some faith in everybody else that it's gonna be like, it'll be cool if we kind of let, you know what I mean? Because as soon as you want to go solo, it's, not as fun.
Yeah, well, it is a group game. It's the fun is the best comparison I ever heard it to was like, like cave people gathering around a fire and telling a story. We're using dice and some pre-made characters and stuff to kind of help us, but really it's just a group of people telling a story together. I just find that to be the most fun.
With like an element of chance, but it's still it's always fun. It's always good when you see a really good DM who like clearly is a writer,
Yes.
And I know a lot of people give like Matt from Critical Role a hard time, but man, that guy loves his stuff.
I think that's what makes it live, is that this one person is so excited about whatever the cool character they come up with, or this alley filled with people selling mysterious trinkets. It's I want to be in there, and again, because of everything that's happening in the world right now, who doesn't want to dive into another world for a few hours and just sort of like, let's just what's Mr. Burf?
So anytime someone follows my Twitch, I get an alert, and it's an obnoxiously loud marching of the clone troopers, because I'm a big clone trooper fan, and I was like, that'll be cute. And it never occurred to me that it's extremely loud and very long, and it's very distracting, and it happens all the time whenever I get a follower.
Burf, you are welcome.
Yes.
We welcome you, Burf.
Welcome, Mr. Burf. I appreciate your follow. And so, how long have you been playing D&D? I know this is a pretty hack question, but
that's okay.
Yeah,
I've been playing. I started when I was born in 1970, so I was sort of at that young, almost pre-teenage years for D&D, which I think is kind of perfect for that era. So I started playing like 78, 79.
Okay.
When I was again, sort of early teenage years. Then once I got into like high school, all of a sudden I was like, nah, I'm cool now. So I stopped comics, I stopped D&D, and then probably more as an adult, I kind of was like, I kind of miss. I'm lucky because as an actor, so I got to pretend.
Right.
So I think that part of my my creative need was getting fulfilled. And then as I got to be, especially here in LA, I was like, there are other people who are playing D&D again. I'd like to come back to that. And I'm really lucky because of Nerd Poker. I was just a fan of the show, and I got to fill in a couple times, and it's brought me back into it whole hog. Now it's a great part of my week. I love it.
I think that, and I listen to I listen to anything about Dungeons and Dragons. And it seems to me that a lot of people the whatever maybe when they play D&D, it kind of like opens those pathways to like, wow, maybe I do want to write, maybe I do want to be an actor, maybe I do want to like do these. It leads them in a certain way, and because it seems like a lot of like actors that like you would have never like Manganello,
Oh yeah,
like that guy, like, and he is hardcore, like he is all about it, like
and a big when he came to play, he did on the Patreon, he did a couple guest episodes. It was really interesting seeing him get to talk about it with Brian, because I think they kind of line up more with you in terms of like Joe Manganiello was very much like, no, D&D is like heavy metal, hardcore guys kicking ass, which was funny because for me, I played with those guys, but I was way more like, I'm shy.
yeah.
I don't know how to talk to people. So being able to then talk to the heavy metal guys, which as a scared, shy person, the heavy metal guys are probably the most scary of the people to talk to.
Yeah.
So to find some like, yeah, but we can all talk about like elves and orcs, right?
Yeah.
We can all agree.
It's and I see it all the time. I think it's like, well, for me, I never played Dungeons and Dragons until 2 years ago. I have been reading Dungeons and Dragons books and collecting Dungeons and Dragons books, comic books, almost since I started getting into comics.
Really?
The reason I got into D&D is because I was on tour with my band, and there was a bookstore, and I bought one of the Drizzt books, which I think is how everybody, the R.A. Salvatore books, gets, who comes in from the outside. I found it. I got like a couple chapters in, and I happened to look. I go, wait, there's more of these. I have to stop. Started over because I had to read them in order because I'm one of those. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is great. And I would buy the D&D player handbooks and the monster manuals for the artwork.
Yes.
And I remember the first time I saw Todd Lockwood's artwork for the Salvatore books. That was when I was like, I need to start drawing these things. Like, it's time to bring the worlds together. I have to, because I have to draw these. And I didn't know anyone who played D&D. Like, I didn't know anyone. And I would see people, and if I'm at a punk show or a metal show, I'll yell, I'll talk to anyone, I'll walk right up to you. Outside of that, if I go into a comic book shop, I'm more reserved. I keep my head down, I buy my comics, and I'll take this and I'll go out. And I'm at Time Warp Comics in Cedar Grove. I was buying something, and the owner Dave was like, he goes, why don't you ever play D&D here? He goes, I said, I don't play D&D. I go, I buy the figures and I buy the books. And he goes, and he literally looked over and he went to Adam. He goes, Adam, Joey's playing D&D with you. And it was like that day he sat me down, and I've been playing pretty much as I can for the last 2 years. That's my story. Yeah. And
do you have a type of a class or a race or anything that you're drawn to, or do you like the mix?
I like, that's hard to say. I've been working on a racing class for myself. Like I'm in a homebrew now. I went off the deep end. I've lost my mind.
Oh, wow.
And
that's good.
I like the shifters. I want like a feral, somewhere between like a Wolverine, not Wolverine, like slashy claws, but the sense of smell, the sense of hearing, the in tune, somewhere rangery, wildy type dude. And I've been working on that for a while. And then other than that, I usually play, I call it a half dwarf. And he's a sailor, and he's got a harpoon, and his job is he goes out on ships, and they hire him to fight monsters in case. Here he is.
Oh, he's Kirk Douglas from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
That's exactly who he is. And he's kind of a Polynesian, Pacific Islander, native indigenous guy. And he goes on ships and fights monsters to protect the fishermen. And that's the guy that I play all the time. And that's the
guy with the spear like that, with that.
He's got the big harpoon, and that's
the harpoon.
That's the one. From the beginning, I have played one version or another of that guy. I've done him as a Goliath, as a dwarf,
No kidding.
as a half dwarf. I love the character. I just keep doing it.
I'm with you. It's interesting. Like in Nerd Poker, it seems as though Blaine is often drawn to elves. Brian is often drawn to like more metal, like more like a big butt kicking.
Brian is the guys that if you had a gun to your head, you know, like, oh, I guess Brian will pick this guy. That's who Brian's picking. And I agree with you. Blaine is an elf guy, and I wouldn't. When Blaine makes me spit my coffee once an episode. He is such a of all the people on the show, and this is like Mr. Metal Punk guy. While Brian's on the show, I feel me and Blaine are the most similar because he'll just hit and it's the little side comments he makes out of the side of his mouth, and I'm like, I feel you, buddy. Like he's hilarious. He makes me laugh so much. Like I
feel like I feel similar to you when I get to play there, because I listen to it so much beforehand that suddenly sitting at the table, there are times when Blaine's making jokes and I'm like, I gotta pinch myself because now I'm not in my car or working out or whatever listening to it. I'm like playing with them, and it's great. It's exactly what you want it to be. Brian and Blaine sit right next to each other, and there's something so fun about watching these old friends who know each other so well play like that.
Oh, the chemistry is, you can tell immediately. Like you could tell that these guys know each other. Like it's great. And Sarah's great, and every character that Sarah's played, when you hear her out of character, you're like, yeah, I can see. I get it. How long have you known those guys for?
I've known them more socially. I didn't meet Sarah until I played D&D. Same thing with them, and same thing with Dan. I met Dan the first time. Dan got sick a few years ago. He's had cancer a couple times. This was the second time his cancer came back.
Ugh.
And Nerd Poker was a podcast at that point, and they did a live benefit at Largo, which is a theater here in LA where I think a lot of podcasts actually kind of end up doing live shows there.
It does sound familiar, yeah.
So I went to go see the live show, and so I knew Brian and Blaine and Ken more just socially through friends, and then that's when I sort of met them as the Nerd Poker crew. And and I was lucky because at some point or other Blaine stepped away, and Brian was like, "Would you want to sit in for once?" I was like, "Yes," in a heartbeat, even if it's just to get killed in the first minute. It's fine. I don't.
It's fun, man. It was, and like I said, the chemistry you had was immediate. Like you could tell, like this guy is having like. And I couldn't. It was like I don't know if he actually has played Dungeons and Dragons, but he's clearly having a great time. Not that you were like playing poorly at all, but like you were having a blast like immediately. And I think when you became Tick-Tock, it was just like guns blazing, like this is great, and you could tell immediately that you love it.
Thanks. I think it's the difference probably like between something like Typha or Tick-Tock, because Typha, again, like coming in as a fan, I just so desperately did not want to mess it up.
Yeah, I understand.
Because I've been. And especially coming from bands, like groups of people don't always work, and it's nobody's fault. It's just how people are. And I've been in a bunch of improv groups and sketch groups, so I was like, okay, I'm being given a really special gift right now to play with these folks. So my job is not to go in and show how loud I am or how funny I am or what great ideas I have. My job is to pay real good attention to what they're doing and support it like crazy, which is, I guess, more of an improv thing.
Yeah, the what is it? Yes, and is that my brother told? Yeah, okay, and like it makes sense that with your improv background, like it's probably really great for playing D&D.
It's that thing of like when somebody says, I don't know, should we go fight the bugbears? Yeah.
Of course, let's do it.
Let's go get it. That's always what I have to remind myself when we're getting deep into like mystery or sort of lore dive, is like I always try to kind of reset myself to, and it's about fighting monsters.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. At some point, we will be stabbing the people we're talking about, correct?
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been fun, and since I started playing, I started playing, I think, right after I started listening to Nerd Poker, and the two really just made me enjoy the other even more. Like, you kind of get it. Like, when you can understand somebody botching a roll, like, oh, that sucks, and then you've actually botched a roll, you go, oh, it's like, oh, I feel your
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah, it hurts, man. And then when you guys play, do you use like for a botch or for a critical, do you use percentile dice to sort of like subdivide how good or how bad it gets?
No. So far it's been like you blew it, and then there's like like there's been a series of like like death save systems, but there's never like when anytime Dan's like, we're gonna roll the the wheel of how screwed you are. Like, I'm like, that's great. Like, that's it reminds me of Beyond Thunderdome when they spun the wheel and it's like
Oh
all the
yeah,
awful things. It's like, oh, great. But
I like that, the name of the wheel of how screwed you are. I want to see
yeah.
that.
It's but yeah, I've having a really good time, and it works because I've with everything going on, everybody's playing Roll20 now, and
Mm.
they're asking me like, oh, do you want to come on? And I'm like, yeah, and I'll just like, does anybody want a token? I could draw you your token. So everybody loves me, and like everyone's like, all right, and I'm like, oh yeah, what's he doing? What kind of sword is it? And I love drawing people's characters. It's my favorite thing to do is drawing people's characters because I love sitting to them, and then I'm like, okay, well then what's his armor like? And they're like, it's metal, and I'm like, what? No, it's not. What shape is the metal? What's this? What's
Mm.
this? And they're like, you're right. And then you just go back and forth, and you're like, oh, this is great. This is great.
Like with what you're doing now, like with I'm looking at the drawing of Tick-Tock. I like the I know you call it, but sort of like how the two bottom teeth kind of like create that almost like jack-o'-lantern shape for his mouth. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's because a lot of the Warforged, like I was telling you, a lot of the Warforged to me, it's too Iron Man and it's too Doctor Doom at
Yeah,
points. And for me, when I want to do a Warforged, I think Iron Giant. That's
yeah.
I can't help it. It's my favorite. It's like one of my favorite movies of all time,
Oh,
and I
it's
can't.
so good.
It's still it's to this day I can't. If it's on, I'm watching it. Iron
Yeah.
Giant is
Well,
my Warforged inspo for life.
I think that's right because you get like the movie itself, just as a design, is so pretty. That's sort of
Oh
that '50s era.
yeah, it's the retro future like we were talking about before. To a
Yeah,
different time, as this is a retro future for fantasy. That was a retro future from the space time when everybody wanted to
yeah.
be from the cowboys, they wanted to be astronauts.
It's so great. And like I feel like you're on that journey with Hogarth and the giant, and then you get to the end with the Superman bit.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
I can't. Forget it. Oh, when he closes his
oh,
eyes and he's doing,
oh yeah.
yeah, that's it. The big thing with the Iron Giant that I think most of for Warforged and Golems in general is the movement of him, the way he was animated. A lot of animation is they fudge things. Like the arm will be bent, and because it's drawn, it is what it is. The Iron
Right.
Giant, you can make an Iron Giant figure that will move exactly the way the Iron Giant moved in the thing. All the joints were real. All the motion, they're ball joints. The jaw moved only the way the jaw can move. And because I'm a big animation fan, so I like notice these
Yeah.
things. And that was like one of the first computer animation, not Pixar, but like a 2D computery thing that I was like, what's this? But his movement
Yeah.
was,
I feel like I remember seeing a documentary where they said like they built him in 3D to get that quality that you're talking about. Like they built it so that he really was a true mechanical man moving, and then everything else is 2D animation. Is that right?
yeah. I remember I've never seen the documentary, but I have seen like the art for the things like that. And the thing with a lot of animation is when joints come, they collapse. Like the two stalks of the leg and the knee, and they collapse together.
Right.
Iron Giant, there obviously everything was static, and it did not collapse. The ground collapsed underneath him, and
right.
that's I love it, and that's
Yeah.
the way he moves is what I think of when I think of Warforged. I'm like, that if they make a D&D movie with Warforged, it needs to move the way the Iron Giant moved, and that's my personal opinion.
I like it. Yeah, well, and I think because of it sounds like we have a similar emotional connection to that character, but I feel like I spread that to sort of every Warforged, like the Iron Giant. There are these sort of things that were made to do a certain job that maybe they don't even necessarily want to do that job, but it's what they were built for. And so there's like a childhood innocence thing
Yeah,
that gets
absolutely.
activated for me, as well as a thing about veterans, about soldiers, like the story of the Warforged is they were built for this war and now the war is over. And so that resonates a lot with me emotionally about, veterans not having a thing to do and getting forgotten about. Like all those things are fun. Like the D&D part is fun, but the emotional stuff really gets me.
Yeah, it's and I think that's a very real thing because with like you were saying, like with the soldiers and stuff, a lot of them are people who really didn't have skills beforehand, and that's why they joined the military. They join the military and they excel, and then the military's done. Well, now what?
Yeah, what happens to me?
Yeah, it's a rough thing for the veterans, and like we were saying with the Iron Giant trying to be made as a weapon and the Warforged being made as a weapon, it goes back to like I was saying with the Clone Troopers, like the Clone Wars. That's a thing. That's a thing I love, where you have these guys that they're, this is what we're made to do. They're made for war and blah blah blah, and then you think about all these things where the only thing they really had was their brotherhood and honor and loyalty, and then in the end they have that stolen from them, and then they get wiped out. It's like oh, it's heavy for Star Wars. Yeah, it's rough, but those are my favorite characters, and I think that's probably why I like your the Tick-Tock so much.
Oh, good.
And his interaction with I forget the name of the little dragon now.
Oh, Gus. Oh,
yeah, Gus. Yeah. It's perfect. It's so entertaining.
What a crazy happy accident that was. I don't know how Dan did that, but boy, that like he just kind of flew in for like half of a moment in an episode, and then I think like it was an episode or two later when he came back as a full-on character. I was like, this is great.
The interaction between you and him, and I think I mean the understanding between the two characters it's pretty heavy-handed. You can understand why the two, well, at least Tick-Tock has a soft spot for him. When you find out about how he was like messed with by the wizards and things, you're like, all right, you kind of understand that, but the back and forth and the calling each other boss, and you're always like, well, I'll call you boss, and I'm like, oh, like that's it's great. Like, it's really really good stuff.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, it makes me feel great every time he calls me boss. I'm like, I get to call him boss now.
Yeah,
this is awesome. I love it.
It's the interactions between the two is some of the most fun dialogue I think of the podcast, but I think most people would agree. Yeah, you guys together are great.
I hope we get back to the Temple of LaRue where we got him. I'm very curious to see if that ever plays out, and if so, what happens.
There's a lot, yeah.
Bloodbath.
There's a lot of karma, potential karma to be had, but also a point when you got a guy when you got a Gus, you're like, do I want him to like take righteous vengeance on someone, or do I just want him to be nice? It's like,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, do I want to see them slaughter everybody? No, but do I want to see, like, for example, that the mistress of the temple, like, do I want to see her get a very stern talking to? Yes.
Yeah, something fitting. But I like nice Gus. I'm a nice Gus fan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can tell you when we were sitting at the table when Gus first, like he was going through his list and Halcyon
Oh, the
did the
list.
whammy on him. When he got sullen, I remember physically sitting at the table next to Sarah and sharing a look with her and going,
Yeah, I think everyone, when he started talking about the list, it was like, what's the list? And I remember just being in the car going, oh, buddy, come on.
"Oh no,
Yeah.
oh no." It's funny because it is. It's like it's our imaginary. It's like it's all pretend. It's just they're not real people. They're just sort of clouds that we kind of say look a certain way. But man, that happened. I was like, this is very real.
Yeah. It's definitely uh it's I think you guys do a really, really great job. And the thing I think that I like, whereas I think there's a similar I think there's like a similar motivation in many ways between you guys and Critical Role. And but I also think while the parallel is clear, I don't think two could be any more different. I think,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, I think I can see someone saying like, well, I really like Critical Role for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. And I could see someone going, I like Nerd Poker, and list those same reasons, and then go, but I don't like that one, but I like this one. Not in a that one's bad or that one's good, but I can see for personal taste, there's people that would, like for the
Sure.
same things, but you guys deliver different things in a different way. Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. I think especially because of the long-term friendship of like Sarah and Ken and Blaine and Brian, and now with Dan and I sort of growing into that. Like, you're with a group of friends who clearly care about each other outside of the game.
Right.
I think that's really fun. And I think Critical Role has a similar quality of these are friends, and I love it when they get together and tell stories. It's, but you're right. I think Critical Role, that world is so big. Like the continents and stuff. Like when he starts talking about stuff on continents, I'm like, oh my God, this is this is a history, in the best sense. This is a history lesson
and
that
you know what?
really need to dive into.
I think it goes back to what we were saying before about Dan. I think you have two guys that are writers and they are world builders,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it is Nike and Reebok, like they're different. Like you got this over here, and it's like Dan, like the Moon Prison and like everything we talked about. Like it's like, wow. And then you got Matt over there, like I invented a class by accident, so here it is. Like, oh, okay. Like they're just wired in a way that makes for a great DM.
Yeah, last night they were doing a live thing where he was talking about some of the stuff he came up for the new book, and he was talking about dudomancy, and I'm like, you invented a new part of magic for D&D, and he starts talking about controlling time and stuff, and it's funny. A couple weeks ago during Nerd Poker, I don't remember how it came up, but I believe Dan asked Sam, the engineer, who doesn't really play a character, he's like, Sam, if you ever played a character, what would you do? And Sam was like, I really wanted to be a time traveler, control that. And I remember thinking, how would you do those mechanics? And it turns out Matt Mercer knows exactly how you would do those.
And he has notes. and it's another good thing. Like Dan, like I say, listening to Dan's episode, that spider guy sent me on a whole thing. And I'm like, all right, well, I need to make a spider race now. And I have it in my head. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a entanglement spell. Well, now I'm going to reskin that to be my web. And he's going to have permanent spider climb because he has to. And, there's going to be, and I'm like, well, yeah, he has venom, but it's only in his mouth. So if he has an arrow, he can dip it on his tooth. And then he has venom for that. And that's where he gets his venom. Like, you know what I mean? And things like these are the things I think about. And I gave him
great.
And I don't know if you see, but in the back corner there's a tarantula. I'm a big spider guy, and I used to rescue tarantulas from there was a local pet store that would call me whenever somebody returned a tarantula. I would keep them. And one of the things that spiders do is they'll send out a thing of webbing, and if you touch that, they sleep with their hand on the web, and they can feel the vibrations immediately for a great distance around their house. I'm like, well, this is a spell that these guys have. It's similar to it would be similar to the tiny hut,
Yeah.
where he has a spread, and if anyone touches that web, he knows immediately of this distance. Because I get really into the biology. I'm like, well, spiders can do this, so here's a thing he can do over here. And that's because Dan, for one episode, talked about a spider guy who was dead for 3 minutes. Do you know?
Marevka, yeah.
And it just sent me on a tirade.
And so I'm hoping, I don't know when this current campaign will run, but I'm like, we got to meet those Marevka guys.
Yeah, that's a lot. They're cool.
And I had a thing in my head. I guess the way he introduced it, I kind of thought it to mean that the spider guys were almost like a brotherhood of like sheriffs or something. So then when we met the evil spider guy with the underwater people, I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on now? They're not sheriffs? So there's a lot we got to dig in there.
And I guarantee you Dan has an answer for every question.
On your drawing, I don't know what you call them, but sort of the side here, those kind of vents on the side.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Your what was your buddy's name who drew it? I'm sorry, I forget his name.
Joel Carroll, the one who did.
Yes.
Was he the one I think who first drew him in sort of the Green Army, like almost like the band leader kind of?
Yeah, all of his design is based on Joel's original drawing. And he has a second drawing where he had the kind of like shore leave army guy hat, you know?
Yeah.
And he had the vents on the side. And I don't know
I didn't notice that.
I don't know what purpose they served, but I liked them also, and I kept them in there. And I like them because they kind of on a skull, they kind of mimic the shape of that on the side there. And I'm a big fan of that. And I don't know if you on his forehead here, I gave a little center piece to the metal, and the eye and the number 5 for the Ice 5.
Oh, great!
Yeah, I try to keep the Easter eggs going in there.
And you know, like as an artist, like like the fun sometimes is just spending an hour staring at a thing and going, "Oh my God, wait a minute!"
Yeah.
Look at that. I was freaked. Are you caught up on the episodes for Nerd Poker?
No, I'm a few episodes. Okay. I just moved. That's why there's nothing on my walls here. I just moved into this place, so I'm gonna catch up.
There's something I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but there's some things about his face that come up that I won't spoil for you. But it's really fun getting to watch you do this.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I like the crossbow. I grew up as a big G.I. Joe guy, and I think that's how I got into.
Oh, me too.
That's how I got into the Clone Troopers, because it's basically Star Wars with G.I. Joe. So I think that's why I always liked it so much. There is a real, I don't know what the weapon is, but what I used for the inspiration for this is, so this metal piece here kind of pops up, and then the arrows drop in. And I think there's another thing I saw was some kind of crossbow equivalent that it doesn't have the front things, the front kind of swing where it's hard to explain. It's a little bit thinner, and it loads in, but it's a thinner kind of, rifle, whatever. Yeah, I liked it a lot. So what do you think? So are the outfit here? Obviously, this is a great design. And I gave him an axe kind of similar to the Woodsman, because you have to have that parallel. Yeah. But now, is he still using the axes?
He used the axe. I mean, his character class is an arcane archer.
Right.
So his main thing, I think, again, I'm sort of learning about his history as the game goes on. But in my head, he is some kind of long-distance-y, scouty, sneaky, but like his finger unscrews and becomes a lockpick. So I'm like, there's something about him that's built for infiltration, but also attacking more from a distance, but I think because of his size, because he's a Warforged, it made sense to me to give him like an axe or some big, because I was like, at some point he's going to be up close to somebody,
Right.
and
Maybe
I
an
think
assassin of some kind. You know, he's got the sniper capabilities and he's got the lock picking capabilities. It could be some kind of Warforged assassin.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, he's some kind of like sneaky assassin, and obviously part of a bigger force. And then his particular within Warforged, they're different. There's Juggernaut, which is kind of what you expect, and then there's a Scout, which is sort of what he could be, but then there's a third class called an Envoy, which is what Tick-Tock is. And the idea with an Envoy is that there are plenty of envoys, but each envoy is unique. They are designed with one specific target or task.
Okay,
So
like a
that's what I thought
Terminator.
was kind of interesting. Yeah, so that's what I thought was kind of interesting about Tick-Tock is like, I don't know what his task is, but he has all these different things. It certainly seems to lead towards, like you're saying, assassin. But it's fun to kind of think about like what should he have, and maybe editing wise, even though there are cool other things he could do, maybe don't give him every cool thing in the world because he's supposed to be for one job.
Yeah, I like that. My immediate, and I don't know where I thought of this from, was as you, because once I saw this picture, this was Tick-Tock's outfit in my head. This was it. This is what he looked like. And to me, with, as you kind of expanded on the character, to me it was like, he was a soldier, but he's not in spirit. He's not a fightery type guy. And it would occur to me that if he woke up where he woke up, he would take an outfit that was not like, he was like this. He doesn't know why it was interesting to him, but it's not this is nice, and this is not a murdery outfit.
Yeah.
It worked for me in my head, like someone who maybe doesn't know what he's talking about liked that, picked that out, like saw it and took it and was like, I'll wear this. Like this, I like this.
Yeah, and I think there's a quality about the Baron dressed him to be sort of his, not man at arms, but more like a valet,
right?
More like a help, which I like too, because it takes away, I'm here to kill everybody. And it's more sort of like, I'm the proper butler.
Yeah.
I'll make sure the wine is at room temperature. May I wipe your bottom, little friend? He's more in that neighborhood.
I like it a lot. It's funny how these things kind of happen on their own and develop on their own. But it's been a lot of fun checking it out and seeing it kind of unfurl, and as all this crazy things are happening around him, you guys don't skip a beat, man. Like Sarah and all you guys, Dan throws some batshit crazy thing at you, and you're just like, yep, let's do it. I love it. Here's what I respond.
Well, we're lucky in our group because, like, as a player, Sarah is not way more interested. Sometimes she'll walk right in and kick butt, but she's also as interested in talking to the monster. Like, her instinct isn't always run up and stab it. Sometimes her instinct is, let's chat with the dragon.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't want to kill us.
Sarah, there are times when Sarah's playing, and the way she handles certain things, it's like, yep, she's someone's mom. She is definitely someone's mom. Like the lot of her views on diplomacy and communication, and okay, that's enough of that, cut it out, or that's that. You're like, yeah, I like it. I get it.
Again, with any group of people, it's so easy to get lost. It's so easy to kind of just get caught up in your own dumb stuff. And she oftentimes is very good at like, guys.
Yeah.
The adventure, guys.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how she says it. She goes, guys, we have the building's on fire. We're discussing it inside of the fire. Can we go outside?
Is this his body? I like that.
Yeah, this is. I'm trying to think what he might look like underneath the outfit, and again, it goes right back to Iron Giant. I'm kind of just jointing him out, and this goes back to my kind of action figure. So you have the down here, you'll have the front collapse, and then up top you'll have the rotating this way, and that'll give them a full range of motion there, and the legs would be ball joints also. Is it too small on the screen for you?
No, I'm good. By my curious nature, I'm just like, can I get close? Can I? Yeah.
I was always kind of with the Warforged and with seeing other people play them, obviously you included. It's they become more. I don't know if I'd ever play a Warforged, but I like having them around. Like I like the concept. I like the visuals and what it can do for a story. There's a lot of classic story elements that are just inherent with a Warforged, and it's good stuff.
I'm really taken with how you have as a player. It seems like you are sort of drawn to one character, but you can skin them, like you said, half dwarf, different races and stuff. But for you, you're always kind of playing at the same person. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think it started like spitefulness because I've always been a dwarf fan, and I was like, so there's half orcs and there's half elves and there's half dragons, but there's no half dwarves. And I can't tell you, I have gotten pushback on trying to play a half dwarf. I'm like, well, how's that even going to work? And I'm like, well, I don't know. If a dwarf has 60 feet of dark vision, this guy has 30. And if if a dwarf can only go 30 feet, this guy can go 40 feet. It's more for lore than it is any kind of specific power set. I just like the idea of a half dwarf. It's just kind of, a guy out of place between two worlds.
And I think too, you're doing an interesting thing, which is you're taking a thing that is from D&D, and for whatever reason, it hasn't been applied to this other part. It seems to me you are following a natural progression that, for whatever reason, we just kind of dropped the ball on.
Like people play dwarves all the time, and I was like, it doesn't make sense that there's got to be some. And then there was before they said, well, there was like a race called the Mule. Or the Muul, and they were all half dwarves, and I'm like, it's cool, but it's different than there's just one half dwarf there. Like, you know what I mean? If there's a whole city of them, you lose the point.
The specialness of it.
Yeah, it's like it's similar to a half orc is like he's half a person, and I get that like he's that close to being a person. He's also half orc, and everybody hates orcs. Like, get it? Like that's fun. Like that's to play. Like I get it.
Yeah. Every time you walk into a room, everybody thinks, ugh, creep.
Yeah, like there's just an inherent like, and and like half elves it's kind of like you hit the jackpot if you're a half elf. You get the best of both worlds. Half orc is the exact opposite, and I feel like with a half dwarf, I feel like you'd be more accepted by humans. I feel it would be the dwarves that would be harder on you than the humans.
I think so too.
Do you know?
Yeah.
It's just
and once you also introduce the basic notion of half dwarf, I'm like, well, what if it was like half elf, half dwarf? Like, what if you start getting into that?
Exactly, it has to be that, and that's worse because you'd get double. Like, you'd have to live with humans, and that seems what happens if you're expelled from someone else. The humans don't like you, but yeah, fine, just pay your rent and you can stay here.
Yeah, as long as you have some gold, we'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's like as long as the rent's on time, whatever. But
I like your hands.
Yeah, the I've always liked the classic robot hands, and I guess it goes back to Star Wars again when Luke got his robot hand.
Oh yeah, of course.
They're fun.
From GI Joe, is there a group of characters you're drawn to, or do you just sort of like GI Joe as a whole? Because I'm drawn to it as well.
When I was young, my stepfather was very much into the military, and I wasn't like I don't know. I always thought like tanks and jets were cool, and like guns. Like I don't know if it was shooting people, but I thought that was like, whoa, these are cool, and these guys are gonna do this thing, and the bad guys are there, and we have to stop the bad guys. And then you got GI Joe, which is every soldier. And then policemen, and then a fireman, and then, and then the first time I saw Snake Eyes, I wasn't a big ninja guy, but Snake Eyes had a wolf, and I'm a big wolf guy, and I was like that. I was like, I like it, and then it just kind of me and my little brother are crazy. We loved GI Joes, and we would but we played everything. It was always, it's like, all right, well, Duke and Leonardo and Optimus Prime,
Oh my God.
there was only mashup. Everybody was like, it was all just crossover city, and like here comes He-Man riding Godzilla to fight the Decepticons. Like it was that, and we owned it. We knew what it was.
Oh, I love that. I was always drawn to GI Joe because I loved the idea that it was like basically super army. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
This guy's the best sniper in the world.
Right. Low light?
So much so, we got one of them. Just like the army. And I love the idea that, like, as opposed to we're going to have 100 grunts, there's one guy, and his name is Grunt. And he gets it done.
Yeah, he's Mr. Reliable.
And then there's Bazooka. Or Zap. He's the one guy with the bazooka. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I loved it, and I loved it too. And they had stuff that I would never care about, but they put out Law and Order. Law and Order was he was a military cop, and he had a German Shepherd. I'm like, well, maybe I haven't thought about it. Maybe that is pretty cool. He has a German Shepherd. There's got to be something to him,
I don't think it's an accident that they're like, MP, that's okay. But if he has a dog,
yeah, people like dog, and I any GI Joe that came with an animal immediately, I was like, absolutely.
Junkyard?
Junkyard was my number one GI Joe from the beginning. I begged my mother to get me a Rottweiler, Junkyard and Mutt, and I would watch the cartoon, and whenever they came on screen, it was like all I wanted was I have bought more Junkyard and Mutt figures than almost any other. And at the same time, I loved Crocmaster.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And the best thing about Crocmaster was his story was he was a guy in Florida who tried to start a security business where he would come and let alligators loose in your backyard to protect your, and obviously he went out of business, but Cobra Commander saw something in him and said, you know what, you got the stuff. We're going to give you a funny costume and you can play with all the crocodiles you'd like. I loved that guy.
You clearly love murder.
Yeah.
Me and Cobra are into that. Come on over, Crocmaster. We can get you a jumpsuit. We can figure something else for you.
It's like, hey, so how's the crocodile security business working for you? Not as good as you might think. Well, we've got a whole island full of weirdos we need you to protect.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the Super Bowl.
Crocodile City over here, pal.
Yeah. He calls his wife, baby, I got the call. It's finally happening. You stood by me all this time, and it's paying off.
We just have to move to Cobra La.
Yeah.
How do you feel about remote mountains? Are you good with that?
It's an island. It's tropical. There's some other things, but...
The thing that I liked about Junkyard and Mutt was that the guy had to wear the muzzle, that he was, of the two, he was the crazy one, and that the dog was like, come on. Man.
The dog was the straight man. That's fantastic. What was the old claymation? It was Hercules, and there was that old claymation.
The Davy?
Yeah, Davy
and Goliath.
Davy and Goliath. And the dog is the straight man going like, all right, Davy, take it easy, buddy. We gotta.
Oh, I like on your drawing. I like the way that you have the body kind of like muscular, but then the limbs way more mechanical. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that so propulsion would be magical. So I think the arms I would make the arms metal. So the force is there. I get a 3D vibe for the chest and the ribs, and you'd want a gap in there because there's got to be something in there. The magic, the Warforged magic is kind of swirling around. Maybe there's some kind of
got to be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think I like it too because of the idea of him being an archer. It makes sense to me that the arms would be minimal because they're an arrow delivery system, so it really would be just this thing has to hold a bow. It doesn't need to be huge. It just needs to be boom. And then this gets the drawstring. I like that. I think it's really interesting.
I like it's fun because you get to draw all my sci-fi nerdy stuff and all my fantasy nerdy stuff, and there's things that you don't think about. It's like, oh, there's a magical element here, and I, uh, I messed around with a class, and it was because of the gunslinger class that they invented, and it's about gunpowder and things like that. Oh, and I think Mercer made that up too. Guy just keeps pumping them out. But I didn't like so the gunpowder for me was all right, but anybody can get gunpowder, and everybody. So what I did in my head was I invented a thing where the guns were they were kind of a runic magic, where everything had to be carved a perfect way, and when the mechanism changed, the runes would line up and cause the propulsion. So in order to become a gunslinger, you had to learn all the runes. You had to learn how to cast the metal. You had to learn how to carve the thing. So when you pull the trigger and the things turn and lined up, it lined all the runes up in a way that it sent the bullet, but the bullet needed, because I don't want to. It's a gun is a powerful thing. It needs to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want to make it like. You got to think. You got to commit to it. It's got to be responsibility. I would think.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone's like, oh well, guns in fantasy, like all the armor is magic. Like just because like what you're gonna shoot a knight and kill him, like no, like you got to be pretty accurate. You know, like it's there's room for everything.
I think it's interesting. Well, and also it's the whole reason I think for me why I play this game is that it takes it out of the regular world. It takes your your idea of like someone having to learn the runes and like, oh, so there's like a language involved, and maybe it's more like not so much even a written language as it is you have to understand exactly the weight of these things, almost like a very important puzzle or a machine. I like all of that. I really respond to.
It's just a thing that whenever you're watching a movie or something, and you got to turn a crank and everything joins up like a safe. It locks together, and then or the Transformers, and just seeing all that stuff. And in my head, it was like a gnome and a dwarf and a human, and the dwarf taught them how to get the metal and cast the metal, and the gnome taught them how to make the mechanism, and the wizard taught them the runes, and then the human taught them maybe like I don't know, like a gun fu type. That old movie where you can fight with the guns, but
Oh, the Christian Bale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Gun Fu.
I just feel like
I know what you're talking about.
It's a cool thing. You can just make it important, and everybody kind of work together for some. And I called them the sheriffs. So that was the thing. So a sheriff came to town, and like he knows how to make the guns, but when you run out of bullets, you're out of bullets. You got to make new bullets and carve new things, and it's not something you can just. It's a big deal. Like I don't want just someone unloading.
I liked that part of the first season of Critical Role with Percy the Gunslinger. The way that Matt would hold him accountable and be like, you have to make like that part of it, the sort of the craftiness of it. I thought felt very D&D like to me.
Yeah, and my stepfather actually refurbishes World War II rifles like Mausers and Garans, and people send him parts from all over the world, and he makes them fireable. And so that's always been in my basement. I would go down in my basement to do my laundry, and there's Mausers and Garans, rifles, the stocks hanging from the ceiling, and the barrels are oiled and over there, and it's always been in my house growing up. Right. So I was like, I see him like cleaning and doing things and like adding wood so this sits with this, and him trying to explain to me the mechanicalness of it. And I'm like, well, maybe let's jack that up. Let's get that.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky with everything I have going on. So here's a question that I've been meaning to ask you.
Sure.
I went through your, the IMDb, and I saw all this stuff, and I was like, okay. So what's Weird Al like?
He's great.
Yeah.
I met him. I met him more socially And then I got to film something with him for Comedy Bang Bang. He is the sweetest, most polite. Not that I would ever expect Weird Al to be anything other than that,
Right.
but he like listens to you and holds eye contact in such a way where you're like, I am taking too much of your time.
Yeah.
By just saying that you're great. But yeah, it's the best.
He's one of those, like, you know what I mean? And I'm at a point in my life where so many of the people that I grew up, like, well, these are the people I hold on of good people, kind of blown it. And it's just like, I need Weird Al to be the best. And I've not heard a single bad thing about him. Like, oh, because I can,
Sure.
I watched the clip of you and him with the croquettes, and I was like,
oh yeah,
screaming. I was like, this is perfect.
And I was lucky when they shot that. Al told me that was something they were going to use on his tour. So right after we shot, that was for an episode of Comedy Bang Bang, which I think aired on IFC. But also then that year when he toured, that was one of the videos, because I think he has a number of costume changes and stuff when he plays live. So I would get friends texting me saying, I'm at the Weird Al concert. You're on the screen right now. And I just thought, again, it wasn't the very first album I bought, but I feel like early on when I first started actually having my own money and buying things in 3D, the album, that's one of the first things I remember buying of my own. So getting to have that experience of
I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. I'm ecstatic for you. Like hearing you talk about it, I'm like, yeah, that sounds so great.
Well, just when he said, he's like, hey, I think this is going to play at the concert. I remember being like, what are you talking about? I'm barely keeping it together right now.
Oh, man, that's fantastic.
When he first we first came into each other's orbits, it was through Tom Lennon, who plays Dangle, the guy in the short shorts on Reno.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And Tom told me the way it happened was he went to Staples for something. He was like buying a bunch of paper, and store's totally empty. And Tom noticed just down the aisle, there's another guy also trying to figure out like, oh, should I buy regular paper or recycled? And Tom looks and goes, oh my God, that's Weird Al. And Tom, like us, enormous fan. So he kind of, works up his courage, turns to Weird Al and says, excuse me, are you Weird Al? And Weird Al looks at him and goes, are you Lieutenant Dangle?
The meeting of the century.
Yeah. And Tom told me that, and I was like, you win.
Yeah. That's it. That's how you know.
That's the best.
Oh, that's such a great story. I'm going to tell my brother that story. My brother's going to, because me and my brother used to sit in our room, and we would listen to Weird Al records and laugh like there was nothing funnier that could exist than the album that we had played nonstop 6 times through, and we'll sing the song in the shop, like, and we watched Kids in the Hall too, and everything else, and I can't wait. My brother's gonna die when he hears this.
Are you guys excited about the new kid? I'm very excited about the new Kids in the Hall stuff that they're doing. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm very excited.
I know that he's excited. We haven't spoken about it yet, but he keeps his finger on the pulse of all these things, and I'm sure he's losing his mind a little bit, because I think that was definitely a precursor to him getting into kind of comedy and stand-up and the improv stuff that he's done that I've watched him do. No one is gonna make you laugh the way your brother can make you laugh. He's the funniest guy I know. He writes for Michelle Wolf. He's
oh really?
Yeah, he's great. Like, he's hilarious. But me and him together, we know each other's buttons, we know each other's weaknesses, and we can murder each other in the way that, like, you can only murder your brother. Like, it's when I hear something like that, I'm like, I gotta tell him. He's gonna lose his mind, and he's I get excited for him.
Oh, of course, yeah. I really like the way the head is on the body. It gives me a little Trap Jaw vibe.
Yes. I'm a big He-Man fan too.
Oh, good, yeah.
Trapjaw. Trapjaw was one of the first villains of a kind where it was there's cyborgs before, but when Trapjaw showed up, I was still kind of young, and I was a big He-Man guy, and Trapjaw showed up, and I'm like, this guy's screwed up. Like like they looked like something went wrong with that dude, and he was cranky, and you got it, like, oh poor guy, like he looks messed up.
Yeah.
He was kind of weird.
I always kind of felt like Trapjaw would have done better if He-Man had put him together instead of Skeletor. That was kind of the vibe I got. I was like, oh, the bad guys put you together. Oh, that didn't work out.
It didn't look like Skeletor on a whim was like, what if we made an android? Wouldn't that be weird? Like, let's make a cyborg. And like, hey, you over there. And he's like sweeping. He's like, yeah. He's like, I want to show you something. yeah, exactly. Thunk. Skeletor, what a jerk.
Were you ever He-Man? I like as a sort of a world, but the original toys, the way they were so broad and muscular, that really turned me off. And it's only now that we kind of see them through different designs where they seem a little more, I don't know, less bodybuildery, that I feel like now I can kind of tune into He-Man more.
Yeah, I think what I liked about He-Man was it was the first kind of like mashup-y thing where it was like He-Man had his sword and he had his axe and he's riding Battle Cat and there's Men-at-Arms with lasers right next to him, and it just like, everyone's like, we're just going to do everything, And then there was dinosaurs, which I love, and I love animals. So there's a giant tiger and a giant panther. I'm losing my mind. Snake Mountain came with a snake puppet. Like, it was everything I wanted.
Oh my God. A couple of years ago, I think those toy guys, the Four Horsemen, they released the action figure of like sort of Battle Cat, but as like a more humanoid soldier. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, those guys are from Jersey. I follow their. Yeah.
When I saw that sort of like Battle Cat as like a whatever two-legged biped, I was like, that's incredible. I love like Battle Cat. That's great.
We had the best, I think, age for like toys, because we had like He-Man. It was like, okay, well, here's Sorceress, and then here's There's Sorceress and the Evil Lyn, and she can turn into a big eagle, and here's the big eagle, and she turns into a big black raven thing, and here's the big black raven thing. So like, and you got the stuff. Like we had like the elephant sprayed. Like, I don't want a guy with a robot elephant head, but he shoots water. So cool. Like whatever. Like. And then there was Snake Men and all that. It was like, this is perfect. There's everything I want is He-Man. G.I. Joe, you had a point. There was a point with G.I. Joe. You only got so crazy. He-Man was like, oh, you like skunks? Here's a skunk man. Okay. They had a moss man.
Are really stunk.
Yeah. And I still smell that. I still know that smell in my head. Like that is all. Oh, yeah. All bad smells are judged against Stinkor for me.
I'm probably gonna have to head out in about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I appreciate you doing this with me. This was a lot of fun.
Me too. Yeah, I love it.
I'm gonna work a little more on these guys, and I'll send this over to you when it's all finished. And if you think of anything else or you have any ideas, I'd love to, flesh them out a little more. But this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate the time.
I like the fact that you're doing him sort of naked, because I like seeing the mechanics of it. That's something I love drawing, but I don't have what you have. So it's really fun to get to watch you just sort of almost effortlessly put this thing together. It's really interesting.
Yeah, the drawing has helped me with D&D because it's like. If I didn't know that much, but I could like help other people who were big D&D guys, and I'm like, I'll draw this for you. Like, look at this, and it's kind of gotten me a little more wiggle room with where I got to play and stuff like that.
Well, I kind of think also too, like the people in your party, anytime you show up with like, that thing that happened, I did a drawing of it. I mean, like it's such a gift you are giving to all the people you play with.
And I love it, and it's more so than anything else, drawing people's characters for Dungeons and Dragons. Like the payoff is like everything you do. You're like, well, what if we did this? And their eyes light up. You know, you're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they get so excited when you're drawing their DD character. It's not like band shirts, anything I've done, people have been happy and they like them. And I've been lucky with it. But when you sit down and you're drawing someone's character, the excitement and the payoff, and they start, oh, and then what about this? And then what about this? And you get this back and forth. It's the most fun. I like, it's one of my favorite things to do, I think.
Do you like the sort of the brainstorming part of it? Is that the most interesting for you?
Anytime I do like an OC commission, I'm like, let's go on the stream. Like, let's do the share screen. Like, watch, like, sit with me, or I'll come meet you at the shop and we'll draw it together. Like, because it's just a different thing having someone go, oh, and this, oh, and this, oh, and this, and they go, oh, I love that. Like, it's just the collaboration of the two it's a lot of fun.
What do you are you on an iPad or are you on like a giant? I know there's a thing called is it Cintiq? Is that what those are called?
Yeah, there's Cintiq is one of the companies.
Cintiq.
I use it's called XP Pen. It's a similar it's an alternative company. And I have an iPad Pro that I use, but I do so much stuff for print where I have to be at 600 DPI at big sizes for everything. So I use most of my stuff I do on a desktop because I need the extra juice. But almost all of my rough sketching I do on my little iPad.
What tool is it? Just sort of is it like I know there's like a Apple Pencil. Do you have sort of like some sort of special stylus that you use to actually physically draw with?
Yeah. So there's. Oh wait, hold on. Let me show you this. So this is. Come here. So this is my.
Oh wow, it's big. I like it.
The 22. It's a 22 inch, and so when I'm drawing this, I have something called the symmetry tool that it duplicates on the other side. I don't know if you could see that, but when I do my concepting, I like to use the symmetry tool to lay out for a design like that. So I'll get it started over here, and whatever I draw on this side, it comes on the other side. I'm sure you saw it when it was coming through. But so that's when I'm designing. Most often, I'll do a pretty static pose like that.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then once I have the design down, I'll give them a little bit more of an action pose. But
well, I think it's what you said. It's like because there's something about the way the joints. You really responded like with Iron Giant. You really responded to the way the physics of that sort of played real.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine if you're then trying to create a pose, you have to go all the way back to how does this actually? What are the angles and where's the weight?
And that's exactly like you were saying. And like when I come down here, I'm like, okay, so these joints on the knees, that's front and back, and then these little caps at the top are the side to side, and you could get that's a full range of motion is those two joints, and a lot of stuff I learned from taking apart my GI Joes. How can I make this move? By taking my GI Joes and ball joints and things.
On the Patreon bonus episodes right before Christmas, we did some Star Wars episodes, and to make it special, instead of minis, I brought in too many, probably like hundreds of Star Wars action figures, and we played. So we used those as the minis. That's a real rush.
Yeah,
I want to try that sometime.
I have a lot of Star Wars stuff, and I mean my big collection now is clone troopers and all the troopers. Sure. I like all the stormtroopers but the clone troopers specifically, and then the Jedi are. So I have a bunch of those guys, and I just bought the tabletop Star Wars game of minis that they put out.
Oh, okay, is that fun?
I've never played it. I just want the little men. If someone asks me to play, I'll play. But I was like, there's clone troopers in here. I need these little men. So I went and I bought them, and
Do you paint miniatures? Will you do that?
I'm thinking about it. I might try to do it. The problem is my buddy Dan Cilieri. He painted this for me.
So great.
And he's a talent that like I watched him doing it, and these things are so small.
Yeah.
And the brush,
the face, the detail on that face is nuts.
He has whites in the eyes.
Yeah.
He's a lunatic.
I started doing that my first mini I ever painted my whole life was Tick-Tock. I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. And like I said, like I don't have a lot of skill in art, but I love it. So if you're ever interested, because I think you would be really good at it, but yeah, you have to get like I have my wife's grandfather's old like super magnifying visor thing.
Oh,
Like you
wow,
use
yeah.
to get splinters out of your hand in the garage, like that thing. But it's fun and learning the different techniques of like you're saying, like to get the white of the eye just so it's
He's got paintbrushes that look like two hairs stuck together, and he's boop, like it's crazy. This I'm like, good job, Dan.
how do you do that? It's so incredible.
He's yeah.
I'm really enjoying this. I would love to do it again sometime if you're interested.
Yeah, no, I absolutely want to do it again.
Right.
Maybe next time we'll do an original for you or whatever.
I'd love to. Yeah, whatever is. Like I said, my instinct is always to defer to the artist because I think you know what you're doing. But anything I can do, if you want to talk or brainstorm or whatever, I'm happy to do whatever.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm actually gonna do more of these. But most of my friends are friends from like heavy metal bands, and I asked you because you reposted the picture when you were happy with it, and I was like, well, maybe he'll do it. And then I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And now I have some other my buddies are in heavy metal bands. We're gonna do some guys for them, and hopefully I get some other people. I might try to bother Telfer. I'd love to. Yeah.
I obviously I'll tell everybody from Nerd Poker about this because yeah, I think it's just like when you create a thing, as an artist, when you create a thing and then another person walks up and says, "Hey, that thing you did, I respond to," like
yeah, I'm a big fan. All the guys do a really great job. I'd love to get a couple of those guys on and do something with them too. But I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy and you're probably got a house full of family with nowhere to go.
Yeah. You can see my dog sleeping right there in the back. You can tell.
Yeah, I had to have my girlfriend come and it's like you got to babysit Wesley because Wesley would have been sitting right there on the bed crying because he doesn't understand when I'm talking to the computer. There's not another person in the room, and he's like, "There's people. Are we talking? There's people here. What's happening?" Like he's so confused.
Yeah. Dad? You're talking to me?
Yeah, yeah. Not you, buddy. It's fine. You're doing great. Go lay down. Oh. But yeah, man. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I'm gonna put this up probably on YouTube and I'll upload it to the podcast or something, and I'll let you see all that stuff. But this was Absolutely. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I like talking to you a lot.
Me too. I will happily do it again anytime. The best. Thank you so much. And again, your art is the best. Wonderful.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It was a labor of love, like to and I don't get to do a lot of stuff for myself. You work so much, and when I get to do something for fun like this, I'm like, yeah, this was fun.
Well, I loved it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. And I'm gonna end the stream now, guys. Thank you for watching, everyone who's watching. I don't know who is. Thank you, Chris. And I'm gonna talk to you for 2 seconds after.